Thank you for joining us today. This is Garrett from Grace Community Church, and I wanted to sit down and talk with Dale Willis. He's our associate pastor, but he also does a lot of the stuff with our missions, and I felt like right now is a perfect time to talk about what some of our missions are, both locally, internationally, and to talk about some of the things that we've been doing during this unusual time, because we've noticed a lot of you guys have either sent us emails or comments wanting us to, talk about how you guys can get involved, or even make suggestions of people or things that we can help. And so the first thing I want to do to kind of start this off, if Dale, you could just give us a quick rundown of what missions it looks like, whether it's financial or just logistically for us here at Grace Community Church.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity to do this, Garrett. Grace has had a really strong history over the years of being mission-minded, both internationally and locally. And I think it's important that we share with our congregation, with the church, that we have a structured way to finance this. We have a specific budget line for missions. Every dollar given to general giving through the church, 10% of that goes straight into a separate account specifically for missions that we monitor well. We have an annual budget to where we designate those dollars to specific agencies here in town that we have a relationship with, plus our international work in Cuba at the time.
Yeah. So for some people that maybe they didn't know that we did, local or international missions, they probably definitely didn't know, that we give 10% of offering towards missions. How can someone either learn more about that, or how can they get more involved financially with what we're doing with our missions?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people have reached out to us during this time to ask how they can best help, or there specific ways or specific agencies that they can help with. And that's really an easy process, especially in this time to where we're not in the building on Sundays quite yet. The best way is to any giving that they do is to designate a percentage of that or a dollar amount of that to local missions, or if they want to give to Cuba, to the Cuba mission work as well. And we make sure that those dollars are in the missions account and get used within the community or within our work in Cuba.
Yeah. So for people that might not know, we don't talk a whole lot about some of the trips that we take, or what we use those trips for. But for some of those people who might not know what our yearly schedule looks like, or the different kind of relationships that we might have. Are there, some agencies, whether they're local or international, that we have, different sorts of relationships with, and, how often do we either keep in contact with those people or keep in touch?
Well, we really have two distinct areas that we work with, and one is our work in Cuba, which our church has been planting small home churches in Cuba for 18 years. We have a strong track record there. We've built amazing relationships. Some of the pastors that we're still working with in Cuba have been in this structure for the entire 18-year period. One of the things I'm most proud of, and the approach that Grace takes, especially in their international mission work, is that our goal is to build relationships. It's not a go in and help somebody build a building and then move on. We have developed very, very strong relationships with the pastors and their families. We call them family. We connect with them throughout the year. We do 2 trips a year into Cuba where we go in and we spend time with the pastors and their families in their churches, in their homes, in their communities. And it's just a very, very, very cool thing that we're doing over there.
Yeah, and for those of you who might not have ever heard about anything like this, or you didn't realize the trips that we took, the first thing is I would really encourage you to watch out for, announcements or Facebook posts or whatever. Follow us online because, usually when we take trips like that, whether it's Dale going to Cuba or even, we partner with some people that take trips maybe, to Nigeria, we have people that come back and talk about those trips. Sometimes, like on a Sunday night or something like that, or even kind of do, small interviews on Sunday mornings. And I'm sure, as time goes on, we continue to flesh out our online presence. We're going to find more creative ways to do that, kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yep.
But I would really, urge you to follow us and keep in contact. And I'm sure, Dale, you'd love to talk to people about, some of the stuff we've been doing. If they ever want to learn more about some of the details, I don't think I would ever hesitate in just sending us an email asking us about,
Please.
What we're doing, whether it's financially or, some of the opportunities that we get to go and connect with some of these people. Kind of going off of that, you were recently in Cuba, and then you've been keeping in contact with some of the people. Just in general terms, what are some of the things that they've been having to, deal with right now that might be the same as what we're dealing with, but might be a lot different?
It's a really tough situation in Cuba right now. And you're right. Ed and I were in Cuba when the COVID thing started developing here in the country. And it was a very tense time for us because we didn't have really access to valid information or current information. We spent a lot of time trying to make phone connections with family just to get the real story. And we had to make decisions on whether to cut a trip short or whether to ride it out over there. We finally decided to cut our trip 3 days short because we couldn't predict how Cuba was going to react to all this. As it turns out, we came back 3 days early, and 2 days later, they closed the country down. We were very thankful to be on an airplane 2 days ahead of that. But currently in Cuba, Havana specifically, they're struggling with a very severe food shortage. We talked to Leo, who is our main guy over there that kind of runs our pastor network for us. And he stood in line for 12 hours last week to get a package of chicken legs that when he got to the front of the line, they were out. So he went home empty-handed. He's got 7 adults living in his home that he's trying to feed. And it's a real struggle right now. Now, some of our pastors out in the central part of the country have tried to help with that. Believe it or not, Havana, the most quote-unquote prosperous city in Havana, is the one struggling the most, where the ones out in the agricultural part of the country are able to get by a little better. So they're helping one another right now. But it's a very tough situation and really deserves our prayer.
Yeah. So, kind of talking about prayer, would you say that's probably one of the first things people should be doing is, if they've got a prayer list or if they've got something that they, interact with on a daily basis or weekly basis, would you say that's probably one of the first things that you can do with some of the people we work with is just be praying for them?
Absolutely true. And that's a year-round thing. I mean, they're going through a really tough time right now, but life in Cuba is hard, especially for a Christian pastor and a Christian pastor's family who are not under the kind of persecution that you read about in the paper, but experience kind of a subtle persecution from community and government officials. And so please pray for Cuba year-round.
Shifting gears a little bit, some people have asked us, I've seen some people, whether they're responding to a survey that we've put out or something, asking us to, be involved with the community. And, we haven't talked about that a whole lot. And I think there's reasons for that we might get into later. But, what are some of the things that, we've been able to do specifically, some of the things you've been able to do or the agencies you've been able to work with? Maybe they're ones we normally work with, or maybe they're ones we don't work with regularly, but we had an opportunity during this. What are some examples of that?
Well, that's been exactly the case. We do have a specific network of local agencies that are part of our budget, part of our missions budget that we give to quarterly and commit to that annually. But in the past several weeks, we've been aware of some other agencies that we hadn't really developed relationships for to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to do that. The Green Country Free Clinic reached out to us with some needs, and we were able to meet those. We've taken supplies to several places like Journey Home, and we have a great relationship with Nehemiah House that has been ongoing now. They do great work over there. And then there's other agencies in the community as well that we've been helping for quite some time. But it's been an opportunity to build new relationships, to find new friends, to find new avenues to help the community, and I think we've taken advantage of that.
Yeah, we got to go. Mike, Jared, Dale, and I went to the hospital, and were able to drop off breakfast for some people that were working morning shifts. Some were coming off and some were just about to get on. We dropped off some breakfast, and I think you talked about it a little bit with the international missions, but I think with the local missions too. One of the things that seems to set us apart is the fact that we're able to develop not just a one-time event or a one-time thing, but actually develop some deep relationships with a few smaller agencies that might not get as much attention, and are able to use some of the connections we have, whether that's financial or I know sometimes we just have connections because of the other relationships we have to give people cleaning supplies.
Absolutely.
Maybe shoes or something like that, and so I think for us, the way we've been doing our local missions work, it's been kind of mirroring that international missions work to have not spread ourselves too thin, but to have some deep relationships with a few people that have needs that aren't getting met anywhere else.
Meeting more than just tangible physical needs is really important. I mean, it's easy. Well, it's not always easy, but it's easier just to check the box and drop off a box of something somewhere. But to stop and see what the personal needs are of the people in that particular agency or that hospital or doctor's office or wherever it might be, I think that's just really important. I think we've approached missions from a more low-profile standpoint, to where we're not trying to look for the "hey, look at us" moment, but we're trying to authentically serve our community and to develop relationships that matter. And I believe we've done that.
Yeah. So, what are some ways with the local missions that people can get involved, here at Grace?
First of all, just be listening to what's going on in the community. Let us know if you hear about a specific need, whether it be even if it's a family in your neighborhood. If you're aware of someone who's lost a job and are struggling taking care of their kids or whatever the case may be in their home, let us know. We are poised and ready to step forward and help in those cases. In terms of financially, like you said before, we've had several people reach out to us and ask how they could help. And the answer to that is just to include, in your giving, a percentage or a dollar amount specifically allocated to missions. Just note that for us, and we'll take care of that, and we'll use that money wisely.
Yeah, and I think too, for some people, because we've got deeper connections with some of these agencies, not everyone needs help from everyone when it comes to maybe volunteering, but talk to us if you feel like maybe you or your small group or someone they can maybe not donate money, but they can donate their time. I think, we're in a position where we might be able to actually help find someone a place to serve.
Yep.
And that obviously not everyone has the same needs, but I feel like through some of the stuff you've been able to do with some of these agencies, we can find out what those needs are that maybe aren't monetary, and help mobilize people to meet those and make more connections?
I think that's one of the things we've done through our approach over the years is we've built lines of communication with those agencies in town that they don't hesitate to come to us with a specific need. And I think they know that we're going to respond the best that we can.
Yeah. So before we wrap this up, is there anything else that people listening should know about with the way we're doing missions, the way we are planning on doing missions, going forward? And I guess to kind of piggyback off that, is there anything that you think will change either drastically from the way we used to do missions, or maybe some things that have maybe even started to change for the better over the past few months?
I don't think much is going to change other than we have developed deeper relationships with people that we didn't really even know that well before we came into this season. I think we have a reputation around Bartlesville of being a church that will respond to a need, and I think that we'll build on that going forward. I think that just that word will get out that we're here and that we're ready to step forward and be as active as we can in the community, specifically in the mission field. I really believe that the momentum that we've gained through these past couple of months, that we'll just build on that going forward. What I would like to see happen within our church is for us to do a better job of just communicating to our church what we are doing in the mission field. We can do that better, and I pledge that we will do that. That we'll communicate, and keep everybody kind of in the loop on what we're doing, where we're headed, and what's next.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that hopefully we're going to be getting better and better with our communication across the board. But for sure, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this right after we had talked with Raj, because I feel like it's something we don't get to highlight a lot, and I feel like it's something that people realize is needed, the work that gets done in the community. And there's a lot of awesome people. I've seen a lot of awesome people, awesome organizations do awesome stuff during this, like specifically here in Bartlesville. I just, again, would urge everyone, follow what we're doing, follow what other people are doing. If you ever have questions about, missions work or anything else, don't hesitate to, email us or call us. And if you ever need to know more, you need to know what our email addresses are or anything, you can find all of our contact info on our website at gccbartlesville.org. And if you want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram or here on YouTube, our handles are always at GCC Bartlesville. Make sure to like, subscribe, all those things so that you can keep up to date with what we're doing, especially if we're, talking about some of the things that we're going to be doing in the future. And thank you again for listening. We had an awesome response last week. I'm hoping for an awesome response this week. And let us know if there's anything else you want us to talk about. Once again, let us know if there's anything, any organizations, any people that we can serve during this time, whether it's financially or just through moral support, and continue to be praying for the people in our community as we continue to deal with this crisis. So, Dale, just want to thank you once again for having this conversation.
Thank you, Garrett.
We will talk to you all next week.
Thanks.